Well, folks, we made it. We made it to the Santa Monica Pier. 9 days of driving across the country in an electric car talking about the election. Hey, everybody, Tim Boehm here. Normally, the Tying It Together with Tim Boehm weekly podcast, but we've been coming to you almost nightly with our front porch politics across America as we talk to voters in battleground states to talk about where our country is after what has been a wild summer. Well, folks, we did arrive, and I want to show you, if you're watching this on YouTube, go to the Spectrum News YouTube page. You can see these podcasts. And I am doing one last charge in the car before we got to take it back to the airport at LAX tomorrow morning. And this charging station is huge, but it's in a parking garage outside of a shopping center. And there's a ton of Teslas here, and I'm crammed inside the car charging. And there's people staring at me like I'm crazy. More than usual. So anyways, it's been a heck of a week. Let me just tell you the final stats on what it took to get across the country with our schedule to charge this car. So it was 9 days. We went to 14 different states, 5 battleground states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and then Nevada. We drove 3,753 miles. It took roughly 15 hours and 45 minutes of charging. That was about an hour and 45 minutes per day. 28 total charges, 3 per day roughly, although one of them was often either topping off at the end of the night to start fresh or starting fresh the next morning. And it cost a grand total of $449.91 or $49.99 per day. So way cheaper on gas, but obviously a lot more pricey in terms of time. Beyond what you were thinking, if you do it for climate reasons or whatever. It was ironic today. We drove from Las Vegas to California, and we came through near a town near Barstow, California, and I had to take a picture of it. We'll show you here. Gas was $5.29 a gallon. That is not a judgment on whose fault gas is expensive, California, anything, but it was just wild to see that. I stopped to get a Diet Pepsi to keep the caffeine rolling, and we saw that and thought, boy, glad I don't have to pay for that. One thing we've not done throughout this is give you sort of a day in the life of what this trip has been like, right? So we get up typically between 5 and 6 in the morning. We pack up all of our gear into this car. Then we start, either we go to shoot a story in town that day, or we get on the road and drive to the next location. While we're driving, I'm usually writing or editing a story, and my photographer, John Stamp, would be driving, or vice versa. We would flip after I was done, and then I would drive, and he would be editing. And then 2 hours of the drive, we use cell phones. We mount them on the windshields, and I would, through an app and technology, I'm able to do live hits or record hits with stations from Spectrum all over the country. And I do 2 hours of that. And then we finish our drive out, and sometimes we'd be doing stories at 8, 9 o'clock at night. I mean, we raced to Madison, Wisconsin to get to this farmer before the sun set. We didn't even start shooting until I think 7:30 that night. Or if we shot earlier in the day, we'd drive till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night to get our next location, check into the hotel, get some dinner hopefully. Then I would tape this vlog or podcast. I would do our social media stuff. I would write in the blog until 10, 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes I actually fell asleep editing this one night. And then I'd go to bed around midnight, and we'd start all over again. And we did that for 9 straight days. I will tell you, living out of a suitcase for 9 straight days, packing all this stuff into the car, going to a new city, I felt like I was in a band, beyond the fact that I have no musical talent and couldn't be in a band, but it felt like we were in a band for 9 straight days. I cannot wait to get home on that front. So, kind of final reflections on, some of this trip and what it was like. Look, America is divided. There's no question about it. Even in places where the election's not as hot, you can feel it. But I will say that America is much different in person, meeting people, than it is online. It's not the same America. Online is just crazy. And we did not really experience that in person, even in the battleground states. Now, what I will say about battleground states, though, is I think it's artificially inflated now. It's more divided because of all the attention that these states are getting. I mean, in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, every single ad on television is political. And they're not good ads. I don't mean quality-wise. They're negative. And so they're just being bombarded with this stuff. Every street corner you go to, so many yards have signs of candidates. And so there's this tension that's there all the time with the intensity. And it makes me wonder if that's what's causing so much division, is you can't get away from it. It was totally different in St. Louis, Oklahoma City, where there were hardly any political ads and a few signs here or there. And people were not talking about the election as much. And they weren't talking about those controversial issues as much. They were talking about kitchen table issues. And then you have like Arizona and Nevada that are relatively new battleground states, and they were sort of in between. Even we talked to a Democratic Party chair there, and she said herself, we're still getting used to this. And she was nervous about delivering for her county and for the state of Arizona for Democrats. So it's just interesting. And where this goes, we'll see. But I think there is some hope that after this election, no matter what happens, that we'll be moving toward a more normal society politically. But a lot of it is online. And people are afraid to talk to people because they're afraid there's going to be combat, whether physical or verbal, if they talk about it. And so some people are just shutting down, which that's not really a good thing either. The car part. Most of you are just learning this. I had never driven an electric car before this trip. We did get a Tesla. It's a Model 3. I'm not sure if we could have made it across the country on our schedule without a Tesla. And that's not a yay Elon Musk or yay Tesla. It is their infrastructure is set up so phenomenally well and expansive across the country compared to the other ones that it made it possible when I would put in Las Vegas to Los Angeles, it'll literally tell you where to stop before the car runs out. So the car's smarter than me, probably. And it actually tells you on the screen, when you get there, you'll have 16% left. So you got plenty of energy to get there, and you need to stop. And so I didn't stress about that nearly as much. That was awesome. I don't know if that would have happened with the other cars. They at first, they were in New York City, they were going to give us a Kia. But there was a Tesla out there too. So we took the Tesla because we had more confidence in the infrastructure. And by the way, I talked to EV enthusiasts all across the country on this trip, and they agreed that is pretty much the case. So that was interesting. We had a couple nervous points. The first night we were driving in pouring rain. I had never driven one of these cars before, and the computer just all of a sudden started trying to find a different charger, and it said it was negative 26% to get to the next charger, which clearly would have ran out. And I was terrified about that. But there was just something, maybe it was the weather. The computer came back, and we were fine. And then we were still learning to trust the computer, because I just wasn't sure. It tells you you'll be at 16% of the next stop. But that does change some, based on whether you're driving super fast, if you're using the air conditioning, the wipers are on all the time, if you're using chargers in there, if it's super hot. We drove through the Southwest. It was like over 100 degrees, and we did notice a change. And so sometimes it would start trickling down. One time we got to low as 7%, and I started getting really nervous. But then the car told us, drive below 75 to reach your destination, so we drove 70. The speed limit was 75, by the way. And we made it. So by the end of the trip, I was pretty confident in that. And so it was really interesting. The biggest question I keep getting asked at the end of this trip is, will you buy an electric car after this? And I'll be honest with you. The answer is, no way, I'm telling you. It is way too political of a hot topic. As a journalist, there is no way. Do I feel more comfortable driving in one of these now? There's no question about it. But you have to make that decision for yourself. And this was an extreme situation of trying to drive 3,800 miles across the country in just 9 days. And it was a test, not to test the industry, not to test a manufacturer, and to not, say definitively this is what it is about EV or not. Because it is a huge debate in places like Michigan, where they rely on the auto industry, and the future of it is in doubt. There's a lot of questions surrounding it still, at least in the short term. So I think it's up to everybody else to make that decision. But I definitely feel more comfortable about it. The Tesla was a great drive. It really fascinating. When you lit off on the gas, it's almost like a go-kart, and the brake, it starts to kind of self-brake. So there were a lot of times in this trip we never even used the brake. It's especially awesome going around exit ramps, because you just sort of slow down and you don't even have to hit the brake. And so that part was really cool. So it was just an incredible trip. And I've always feel great about visiting people across America, even in tough times. From the Trump supporter in Pennsylvania who built that 4,000 nail welded sculpture of Donald Trump posing after he got up after that assassination attempt, to talking to a balloon pilot 3,000 feet in the air at the International Balloon Fiesta in Albuquerque, which was incredible. Talking to these people individually, talking about the issues and their communities is uplifting. And that's what we're trying to do with Front Porch Politics. And if you've not seen it, we've been running them nationally in Spectrum News, a few of them this year. In my home state of North Carolina, we do them every month. It's to get people back into their communities and caring about politics, in quotes, without being bombarded by the rhetoric and tone that we've seen. There's a place for that. And I do a nightly show on television where we do a lot of that. We don't try to, have bickering, but you talk about the tough things, and sometimes there's tough conversations. But this is meant to cover politics in a different way, and we hope you enjoyed the trip with me. Please reach out to me with any questions. We'll do follow-ups on this for a long time, and I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll have a new regular episode of Tying It Together with Tim Boehm next week on your feed. In the meantime, be well. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Tying It Together with Tim Boehm, a Spectrum News One production, produced and hosted by me, with a huge assist from our digital team. Holler at me with your questions, comments, concerns, and ideas for future shows. In the meantime, be well, be kind. If you can, buy local. We'll talk to you next week, if not before then.